Flight attendant slaps a delivery man, not knowing he's an undercover FBI agent. Prepare yourselves for a breathtaking tale filled with shocking turns and gripping suspense. Today's story is inspired by an unbelievable scenario. A flight attendant, blinded by arrogance, slaps a humble delivery man without realizing the storm she has unleashed, because that delivery man is secretly an undercover FBI agent. In the next moments, you'll be drawn into a web of mystery, tense encounters, and pulse-pounding action. Every character holds secrets that intertwine with powerful revelations, and you'll be left guessing at every step. Now, let's begin this remarkable journey. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. The day began like a routine morning at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York. Travelers bustled through the terminals, rolling luggage and sipping steaming coffees, checking flight updates overhead. Among them was Clare Jennings, a senior flight attendant for Delta Airlines. She was well known for her punctuality, impeccable uniform, and a strict adherence to airline rules, perhaps too strict. Though she was adept at her job, there was an undercurrent of arrogance in the way she spoke to co-workers and passengers. She believed her authority went unquestioned, and her regal stride through the concourse bordered on imperious. Little did she realize that her unwavering confidence would soon lead her into a cataclysmic collision with fate. Outside Gate 37, a line of cabin crew waited to board an international flight bound for London. Claire stood at the front, her shoes polished to a mirror shine. As the gate agent finished scanning crew badges, a maintenance worker hurried by, nearly brushing her pristine blazer with his rolling toolkit. She hissed disapproval under her breath. Before she could scold him, the overhead announcement broke through the bustle. "Attention all Delta personnel, please report any suspicious activity to security immediately." Claire arched an eyebrow. Suspicious activity in an airport was not uncommon, but the tension in the speaker's voice gave her a chill. She checked her watch and continued forward, scolding herself for feeling unnerved. She had a flight to prepare for, and that was her priority. Meanwhile, in the subterranean corridors beneath the terminals, a figure moved with stealthy intent. Thomas Rivers was the name on his ID badge, though it was not the one on his FBI credentials. His cover was that of an ordinary food delivery service courier, a disposable role that let him slip among staff offices without question. He wore the uniform of a popular grocery delivery app, carrying a thermal bag strapped over his shoulder. Thomas was at JFK on a mission so confidential that only 2 other FBI agents knew of his presence. He had been chasing leads on a criminal enterprise involving counterfeit passports, suspected to be orchestrated by a crew with international ties, and rumor had it they had infiltrated multiple airlines. The deeper he dug, the more suspicious the trail became, suggesting well-placed insiders across different departments. Today, he intended to gather final intel and confirm the identity of the culprit. Little did he know his investigation would soon converge with Claire's unstoppable pride. The path leading to the flight crew lounge was lined with bright LED signs boasting special offers and duty-free shops. In one of these shops, Claire's co-worker, Avery, was buying last-minute snacks for the flight crew. With a wave, Avery flagged Claire over to pick out a treat. Despite her busy schedule, Claire obliged, selecting a gourmet chocolate bar. As they laughed about the upcoming flight and overnight journey to London and back, Claire noticed a figure in the distance. It was Thomas, the undercover FBI agent, wearing a bright green cap signifying his delivery company. He seemed to be checking his phone, scanning the area as if waiting for instructions. Claire found something about him peculiar, but she couldn't place it. Perhaps it was the way he exuded a sense of composure, despite being a delivery man in an environment brimming with security protocols. Rushing to the flight attendant lounge, Claire encountered Thomas again near a staff-only area. He was holding a small package, eyes darting subtly across ID scanners. She frowned. In her mind, only authorized personnel should ever cross that threshold, and she definitely hadn't seen him before. Though Delta often hired private couriers for urgent deliveries, Claire's instincts told her something was off. Still, she had no time for a confrontation. Instead, she brushed past him with an air of superiority, ignoring his polite "excuse me" when she nearly knocked him with her carry-on. Thomas, for his part, simply gave her a cordial nod and stepped aside. He had bigger goals to achieve today than quibbling with a self-important flight attendant. Inside the lounge, Claire's spidey senses tingled. She debated reporting the unknown delivery man, but ultimately decided her position wasn't to meddle in external affairs. A brief meeting awaited her. The pilot, Captain Martin Doyle, was discussing final updates to the flight plan. However, before she took a seat, she overheard the lounge telephone ring. One of the junior flight attendants answered, and, after a moment, called for Claire. "It's for you," they said, a note of urgency in their voice. Confused, Claire stepped over. The voice on the line was from an airline administrator, reminding her of a special shipment of sensitive documents that had to be transported to London. She was told to expect a delivery to the plane within the next hour. The final words from the administrator were laced with a cryptic undertone. "Treat the courier with utmost respect and caution. There's more to this package than meets the eye." Perturbed but intrigued, Claire strolled back to the meeting. She wondered if the unknown man in the staff area was connected to that shipment. The seat next to Avery was open, so Claire took it and tried to focus on Captain Doyle's security briefing. He spoke of new procedures for baggage checks, passenger screening, and the frequent reminders they received about smuggling syndicates. "We've got to be on high alert," he insisted. "These threats are real. Even airline staff can be compromised, and that's why it's vital we trust each other and remain vigilant." Claire felt the tension in his voice ripple through the group. Though she considered herself above reproach, she also realized how cunning criminals could be. The meeting ended with a final caution that any suspicious behavior, no matter how trivial, should be reported immediately. Still, as they wrapped up and the flight crew dispersed, Claire couldn't stop recalling the phone call. Something about that courier and the hush-hush package bothered her. Determined to confirm her suspicions, she decided to keep a close eye out. She headed through the corridor again, bound for the gate, when she noticed Thomas stepping into an office labeled "Security Authorized Personnel Only." Confusion and indignation spread through her like wildfire. Why would a mere delivery man have access to that office? Claire's indignation was fanned by her rigid sense of rank. She marched up, ignoring the doors that warned of restricted access, and caught him just as he was stepping out. Thomas clutched a small envelope, stamped with official seals, and a separate file folder. Realizing she was face to face with him, he tried to sidestep. Claire narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me," she said, voice poised with forced politeness. "Can I help you with something?" Thomas offered a thin smile. "I'm fine, ma'am, just completing a delivery." He took a step to go around her, but her suspicion flared. "That office isn't for deliveries," she said. "I should know. I've worked here for years," Thomas answered politely. "I have clearance." But she didn't believe him, nor did she care for a more thorough explanation. The tension grew until a security guard ambled by, noticing the confrontation. Instinctively, Thomas flashed an ID that looked legitimate to the guard, who gave a nod of approval. Claire felt her pride smolder. She hated being undermined, especially on her own turf. She decided to let it go temporarily. After all, the flight was boarding soon, and she had no desire to be late. Yet, as she walked away, her mind churned with possible explanations. She had no idea that Thomas had carefully staged the entire scenario. He wanted a confrontation, just not yet. He suspected Claire, or someone else within the flight crew, might have ties to the counterfeit passport ring. Carefully orchestrating smaller interactions could help him observe behaviors. The next confrontation, though, would be far more explosive. Soon, the plane was ready for boarding. Claire had changed into her standard uniform, complete with a bright Delta Airlines scarf, and helped direct passengers to their seats. Outside, Thomas loaded a special container onto the plane. He had official paperwork for it, stamped by the airport's cargo division. Even the pilot recognized the forms as legitimate. As the last passengers settled in, Captain Doyle emerged from the cockpit to sign off on the final cargo manifest. That included the sealed envelope and mysterious package, which he entrusted to Claire for safekeeping in the locked overhead compartment near first class. Claire took it with a huff, glaring at Thomas as he hovered by the forward galley. She couldn't shake the feeling that something dangerous lurked behind his calm smile. Once the cabin door was closed, and flight attendants performed the standard safety demonstrations, the plane lifted off into the twilight sky. The hum of the engines soothed most travelers, but Claire found no solace in the routine. Her mind was fixated on the package. Why had the airline administrator insisted on such careful treatment? And why had that same man, Thomas, been so pervasive around restricted areas? She decided to peek inside the overhead compartment. Pressing her ear to it, she heard nothing unusual. She reminded herself that rummaging around a top-secret envelope was probably a bad idea. Still, curiosity gnawed at her. She resolved to bide her time and wait for an opportune moment. Meanwhile, as the plane soared, Thomas sat in an economy seat with the tray table down, tapping away at a secure chat app on his phone. He was sending coded updates to his superiors at the FBI. The vantage point from the seat allowed him to observe the entire cabin. He watched how Claire interacted with passengers, how her polite facade cracked whenever something tested her patience. He also noticed her repeated glances toward the overhead bin containing the envelope. She was certainly fixated on that secret cargo. Thomas smirked, realizing she would eventually try to break protocol. He was counting on it. Turbulence shook the plane as it crossed the Atlantic. Dim overhead lights flickered momentarily, provoking a few anxious looks from passengers. Claire and Avery made their rounds, offering refreshments and meals. Throughout the service, Claire noticed that Thomas kept to himself, politely declining any meal and quietly working on his laptop. When she reached his row, she mustered a forced smile. "Can I get you anything?" she asked. Thomas, tapping the laptop closed, offered the same thin smile. "No, thank you. I'm all set." Claire nodded and moved on, suspecting that he was up to more than just checking emails. Halfway through the flight, when the cabin lights dimmed for passengers to rest, Claire saw her chance. Most people were asleep or watching in-flight entertainment. She carefully opened the overhead bin, retrieving the locked case. She knew the passcode from the instructions the airline administrator had given at least. That was the official story. In truth, the instructions had told her explicitly never to open the case. But her ambition overruled her better judgment. With a single beep and a click, the case popped open. Inside, she found the sealed envelope, stuffed with documents labeled classified. Next to it lay a small black device that looked like a miniature data drive, sealed in plastic. The gravity of the items was unmistakable. More curious than ever, she removed the envelope and gently peeled one corner open. Suddenly a voice came from behind her. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Claire spun around, heart pounding. There stood Thomas, the elusive delivery man. She tried to stammer a response, but her words stuck in her throat. His demeanor radiated quiet authority, something she found inexplicable for a supposed courier. "Those documents aren't yours to read," he continued in a hushed tone. Claire clenched her jaw. "Who are you to give me orders?" she retorted, her voice trembling with indignation. Thomas exhaled slowly, as though deciding how much to reveal. At that moment, Avery appeared at the galley entrance, startled by the tension. Thomas calmly removed a phone from his jacket pocket, pointing the screen at Claire. It displayed a federal seal beneath an authentic FBI badge. "Let's just say I'm not who you think I am," he said, then snapped the phone closed before. Avery could catch a glimpse. Claire's face went pale. Avery, clueless about the hidden exchange, asked if everything was okay. Claire, swallowing her shock, forced a smile and quickly closed the case, locking it. "Everything's fine," she managed to say, though her voice wavered. Thomas nodded politely and said, "Just making sure our flight attendant is safe," then headed back to his seat. The moment he was out of sight, Avery gave Claire a puzzled look. Claire waved it off, but her mind reeled. A swirl of anger, confusion, and fear churned in her stomach. The man she'd suspected of wrongdoing was actually some kind of federal agent with clearance, and he'd nearly caught her tampering with official documents. If that wasn't bad enough, her pride refused to let her stand down. Part of her still believed she had the right to investigate the cargo, especially if it threatened her flight. Hours later, the plane touched down at Heathrow Airport. Customs and immigration were routine, but a swirl of hush-hush phone calls marked Thomas's quick movements. Claire tried to read his body language, but it was nearly impossible. He seemed to blend seamlessly into various official channels. Soon, the flight crew settled into an airport lounge for a scheduled layover. Claire took the chance to slip away from her colleagues, determined to learn more about Thomas's presence. She navigated through side corridors leading to the baggage claim area, suspecting he would be there collecting the special cargo. Sure enough, she spotted him at a private claim belt used by diplomatic couriers. Receiving the sealed case from an airport official, she hovered behind a pillar, watching. For a moment, she contemplated confronting him openly, but as soon as she took a step forward, two stern-looking men in dark suits approached Thomas and began speaking to him quietly. She couldn't make out their conversation, but she recognized the seriousness in their stance. Her heart pounded. This was bigger than she had imagined. Thomas was clearly important enough to have contacts on this side of the Atlantic as well. Torn between a growing sense of danger and burning curiosity, Claire lingered until she felt a hand on her shoulder. Startled, she spun around to see Avery behind her. "Claire, what are you doing lurking around here?" Avery whispered sharply. Claire gestured for silence, but it was too late. One of the men in suits had noticed them. In a split second, the man locked eyes with Claire. Thomas followed his colleague's gaze. Recognizing Claire, he gave the briefest shake of his head, as though warning her to leave. Claire, flustered, grabbed Avery's hand and hurried away, a knot of frustration forming in her chest. Why should she leave? She worked for the airline. She had every right to know what was happening around her. That arrogance spurred her to vow that the next time she had a chance, she would confront Thomas and demand answers. The following morning, after barely any rest, Claire checked the departure board. Her flight back to JFK was scheduled for the afternoon. The crew had a few hours of downtime, so she decided to investigate on her own. She began by discreetly speaking with a friend at the airport security office, gleaning scraps of intel about a rumored FBI operation crossing international lines. She learned that the FBI suspect was an airport insider, forging high-quality counterfeit passports and funneling them through unsuspecting couriers. If that was the case, she reasoned, maybe someone on her flight crew was involved. Her mind raced. Could it be Avery, or perhaps one of the junior attendants with financial troubles? She didn't realize that her quest for the truth would soon twist her life into a knot of danger and betrayal. Meanwhile, Thomas was busy meeting with his counterparts from Interpol at a secure facility near the airport. They exchanged urgent updates. Interpol had tracked suspicious communications leading right back to a flight attendant on Delta, someone highly respected but with hidden ties to criminals. Thomas was stunned when they showed him the evidence: bank transfers, coded messages, everything pointing to an elaborate scheme. The flight attendant in question was named Clare Jennings. Thomas found it hard to reconcile the brash, haughty woman he'd encountered with an international criminal mastermind. Still, the evidence on the screen was undeniable. Dates, amounts, references to future drop-offs. It all matched the flight schedule. "We need proof," Thomas insisted. "I can't go accusing her without direct evidence." The Interpol agents nodded. "You'll have your chance on the return flight," they said. As time ticked closer to departure, Claire received a text from an unknown number. "We know you suspect something. Keep your nose out of it unless you want trouble." Her hands shook. Someone was watching her, aware of her prying. She glanced around the hotel lobby, paranoid that every passerby might be an informant. Still, her pride kept her from backing down. She had to clear her own name if she ever became a suspect, or, better yet, show the world. She was a hero for unearthing a criminal ring within her beloved airline. Little did she know that at that very moment, Thomas was finalizing a plan to catch her in the act. Boarding time arrived, and the flight crew gathered at the gate. Thomas appeared too, again posing as a delivery man with an urgent package to return to the States. This time, his presence was accompanied by a subtle tension in the air. Claire avoided eye contact with him, her mind swirling with half-formed theories. The plane took off on schedule, soaring over the Atlantic once more. Soon after the seatbelt sign blinked off, Thomas discreetly moved from his assigned seat to the galley area, capturing covert images of the flight attendants. When he reached Claire, she glared at him. "Shouldn't you be seated, Mr. Courier?" she asked icily, loud enough for a few nearby passengers to hear. He didn't back down. "It's Thomas," he said, a hint of steel in his voice. "And I think we need to talk." Seizing the moment, Claire dragged him behind the curtain, separating first class from the galley. Her voice trembled with controlled anger. "You've been everywhere, sneaking around, meeting strange people, and now you're on my flight again. You owe me an explanation." Thomas took a measured breath, aware that this confrontation was drawing the attention of Avery and a couple of other attendants. He kept his voice low. "I'm with the FBI. We have reason to believe there's a smuggling operation, and it involves someone on this flight crew." Claire blinked in shock. Her indignation flared again. "Are you accusing me or my colleagues of something illegal?" Thomas maintained his calm. "I'm simply trying to do my job. If you know anything, now's the time to speak up." She scoffed at him, ignoring the flicker of anxiety in her gut. Their tense conversation was abruptly cut short by a call button. A passenger in business class was complaining about an issue with the in-flight entertainment system. Claire rushed to handle it, leaving Thomas alone. He slipped back to his seat, steeling himself for the trap he planned to set. Meanwhile, in the galley, Claire tried to focus on her responsibilities, but her thoughts kept returning to Thomas's words. Could someone on her crew actually be involved in smuggling? She replayed the suspicious phone call from the airline administrator, the strange men in suits, and Thomas's repeated presence. With a deep sense of dread, she realized that her next steps would determine whether she was a hero or a scapegoat. As the flight wore on, Claire's curiosity overrode her sense of caution once again. She decided to snoop through the passenger, manifest for any anomalies. After some tinkering with the onboard computer, she discovered that Thomas had no official seat assignment under that name. Instead, a different alias was listed. She gasped. The FBI agent apparently traveled under multiple identities, one for each leg of the mission. Suddenly, a wave of guilt crashed over her. She was poking into federal secrets again, risking more than just her job. Yet she pressed forward, scanning for any sign that her colleagues were using similarly fake credentials. That was when she spotted it. A suspicious code appended to Avery's staff listing. It wasn't a standard airline code. Her heart pounded as she recognized it from the cryptic documents she had glimpsed in the classified envelope. Could Avery be the mole? Claire tried to recall every sign of potential duplicity. Avery was always so cheerful, but that didn't preclude secrets. As she debated confronting her friend, an unsettling announcement came over the intercom. If there is a Claire Jennings aboard, please report to the cockpit immediately. Passengers looked around in confusion. Flight attendants rarely received direct calls to the cockpit unless it was an emergency. Heart racing, Claire hurried forward. Captain Doyle looked grim behind the controls. "Claire," he said quietly, "we have an urgent message from airline security. They want to speak with you the moment we land. Something about suspicious financial transactions involving your account." Claire felt the blood drain from her face. "That's impossible," she stammered. "There must be some mistake." The captain shrugged apologetically. "I'm just relaying the message," he said. "We'll sort it out on the ground." Returning to the cabin, Claire felt a surge of panic. Could someone have framed her? Everything was spiraling out of control. She considered confiding in Avery, but decided against it, worried that Avery might be complicit. Instead, she marched over to Thomas's seat, where he was reading a magazine. Her voice quivered with rage and desperation. "They're accusing me of something. I've never taken bribes, never done anything illegal." Thomas closed the magazine slowly, regarding her with a calm, unreadable expression. "I know," he said softly. "What do you mean, you know?" Claire demanded. Before he could answer, the plane hit another patch of turbulence, throwing them off balance. As soon as the shaking subsided, Thomas leaned closer, dropping his voice. "I believe you're being framed by the real culprit. I also believe you opened that classified envelope without permission. Am I right?" Claire's eyes widened. She felt cornered. Slowly, she nodded. "Yes, but I only did it because—" He cut her off gently. "Right now, none of that matters. You need to trust me if you want the truth to come out." Claire was torn, but seeing no other choice, she acquiesced with a shaky nod. Then, in a surprising show of humility, she asked, "What do I do?" Thomas placed a folded note in her hand. "Meet me at the back of the plane when the lights go down for landing. Keep quiet until then." With that, he stood and moved away, leaving Claire stunned. She wanted to demand answers, but she could see the seriousness in his eyes. For the first time, she felt a flicker of trust in the man she had initially dismissed as a mere courier. As the hours crept by, the plane began its descent over the Atlantic coast. The cabin lights dimmed for landing, and Claire discreetly slipped away to the rear galley. Thomas was waiting there, glancing around to ensure privacy. "I've been investigating a ring of smugglers. One of them is in your flight crew. We got evidence pointing to you, but I suspect you were set up." Claire swallowed, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "You think it's Avery?" Thomas hesitated. "Avery is definitely suspicious, but there could be more people involved." Claire pressed him for details, but he refused to reveal more than necessary. "We'll land soon. When we do, follow my lead. We need the culprit to incriminate themselves, or you risk going down for their crimes." Moments later, the plane landed smoothly on the tarmac at JFK. Ground staff bustled around, guiding the aircraft to its gate. Passengers shuffled off, retrieving carry-ons from overhead bins. Claire's heart pounded, and she fought the urge to confront Avery, who was chatting amiably with other attendants as though nothing were amiss. Soon, an airline security team boarded. The lead officer, a tall woman with sharp eyes, asked for Claire by name. "Come with us, please," she said. Fear knotted in Claire's stomach. Thomas caught her eye from across the aisle, silently mouthing, "Trust me." Reluctantly, Claire followed the officers into the jetway. There, they seized her ID badge, instructing her to remain silent. She thought all hope was lost. In the terminal, the security officers escorted Claire to a secluded side room. Her mind spiraled with worst-case scenarios. Just as one officer began reciting her rights, the door burst open. Thomas entered, brandishing his FBI badge, followed by two plainclothes agents. "Hold on," he ordered firmly. The officers looked startled, but didn't protest. Thomas stepped forward and locked eyes with Claire, then turned to the officer in charge. "Claire Jennings may be a person of interest, but we have new evidence that contradicts your allegations," he stated. Claire gaped in disbelief. Thomas continued, "We have reason to believe the real culprit is still on that plane or in the gate area, and Miss Jennings has agreed to cooperate with us." The lead officer frowned but relented. "Fine. We'll hold off on any formal charges until your investigation is complete, but she's not free to leave the airport." Thomas nodded. "Understood." With that, Claire was released, though a different security guard trailed her as an escort. She followed Thomas and the other agents to a vantage point overlooking the baggage carousel, where the flight's cargo was being offloaded. Among the luggage, the special container that had been locked in the overhead bin was handled with extreme care. Suddenly, Avery appeared, heading straight for it. Claire watched in stunned horror as Avery slyly scanned the area and approached the container, exchanging quick words with a ground staff worker. The worker turned out to be one of the men Claire had seen with Thomas in London, only this time. He wasn't on Thomas's side. He was part of the smuggling ring, cleverly disguised as a baggage handler. Avery slid a small USB device to the man, who then attached it to the container's seal. Thomas clicked a hidden camera, capturing everything. The FBI agents crept closer, ready to intervene. Just then, Avery glanced up and saw them. Her eyes widened, and she bolted toward a nearby exit. Without hesitation, Claire broke away from her security escort and sprinted after Avery, heart hammering in her chest. The entire terminal turned into a stage for their chase. Passengers gasped as two flight attendants dashed past, one in pursuit of the other. Thomas and the other agents followed, weaving through travelers and shouting for them to move aside. Avery crashed through a staff-only door, setting off an alarm. Claire was hot on her heels, fueled by a mix of anger and betrayal. They emerged onto a loading dock filled with trucks. The metallic smell of fuel and the din of conveyor belts filled the night air. Avery darted behind a stack of crates, rummaging frantically in her uniform pocket. Claire edged closer, breathing heavily. "Why, Avery," she demanded. "We trusted you." Avery leveled a cold glare at her. "You were too blind by your own pride to notice anything. All you cared about was that I always listened to you, always ran errands for you. You never suspected me." Then Avery brandished a small stun gun. Claire's heart nearly stopped as Avery lunged. But just as sparks crackled, Thomas appeared, tackling Avery to the ground. The stun gun skittered away, discharging harmlessly on the concrete. Avery snarled, attempting to wriggle free, but the FBI agent pinned her down with surprising strength. The other agents arrived seconds later, helping secure Avery in handcuffs. "It's over," Thomas told her calmly. She spat in rage, but her defiance was no match for the iron grip on her arms. Claire, shaken but uninjured, could only stare in disbelief. Moments later, the lead officer, who had nearly arrested Claire, arrived with more security personnel. They surveyed the scene, Avery in handcuffs, the loaded container with suspicious modifications, and the hidden USB device. Thomas explained that Avery had been smuggling counterfeit passports in and out of the country, using the flight to swap data and documents. Claire felt a chaotic flood of emotions, relief that she was exonerated, fear for having been so close to criminal activities, and fury at her betrayal by someone she considered a friend. The officers thanked Thomas for his quick action. Then, to Claire's amazement, the lead officer apologized to her for the confusion. We had legitimate financial transactions linking back to your account, she said, still baffled. Avery must have used your credentials to route money and traffic documents under your name. With Avery safely in custody, Claire turned to Thomas, her savior in more ways than one. But before she could speak, an airport administrator, the same voice from the phone call, arrived. He was out of breath, having rushed to the scene. Claire, the airline extends its deepest apologies. We suspected infiltration, but we didn't know who was compromised, he explained. That's why we asked you to guard that envelope. We needed to see who would try to access it, and apparently Avery set you up. Claire nearly broke down at the magnitude of what had happened. Thomas put a reassuring hand on her shoulder, nodding respectfully. At that moment, a group of onlookers gathered. They included some flight crew members and even a few bystanders who had followed the commotion. Among them, someone whispered, "Is that the same flight attendant who slapped the delivery man?" Claire flushed with embarrassment as she recalled that initial encounter when she had nearly struck Thomas in her arrogance. She glanced at him sheepishly. He regarded her with a measured gaze and then turned to address the crowd. "Everything is under control, folks. Go about your business." The crowd began to disperse, leaving Claire standing there, her face still aflame. An awkward silence settled between them. Finally, Claire mustered the courage to speak. "I'm sorry," she began, voice trembling slightly. "I treated you horribly and accused you without cause. My pride got in the way. Thank you for helping me and for saving me from being falsely accused." Thomas let the faintest smile tug at his lips. "You were under stress," he replied gently. "Sometimes we jump to conclusions. What matters is that you cooperated when it counted." She bowed her head, swallowing hard. "Still, I owe you an apology. No one deserves to be treated that way." The adrenaline began to subside, replaced by a profound sense of exhaustion. Sirens blared outside as airport police loaded Avery into a patrol car. The rest of the flight crew had been questioned, but none seemed involved beyond Avery. The administrators assured Claire that she would be cleared of any suspicion once the forensic accountants verified she hadn't personally received any illicit funds. Yet her reputation, she feared, might take time to repair. Gossip traveled fast among airline staff, and Claire knew that the rumor mill would spin her near arrest into a dramatic tale. Ironically, that drama might overshadow the real story of how Avery had masterminded the smuggling ring. Over the next few days, a flurry of investigations consumed the airline. Claire underwent multiple debriefings, providing every detail of her experiences. She felt oddly numb, the reality of what transpired sinking in slowly. Thomas, on the other hand, filed his official report with the FBI. He described how the final confrontation validated months of investigative work. Avery and several co-conspirators would face federal charges. Claire was lauded by some for unwittingly aiding the capture, but there was still a current of resentment from those who believed she had colluded. To stave off suspicions, the FBI eventually released a statement acknowledging Claire's cooperation. Despite this, Claire was placed on temporary leave while the airline's internal review concluded. Being away from the job she prided herself on left her with too much time to think. Each day she'd wake up, replaying the events in her mind. She felt guilty for her arrogance, for slapping Thomas, for prying into affairs that nearly got her charged with espionage. She also felt a deep sadness about Avery's betrayal, someone she'd shared countless flights and jokes with. Determined to make amends, she started volunteering at the airport's community outreach programs, hoping to regain some sense of purpose. One morning, Claire was sorting donation items when she received an unexpected visitor, Thomas. She looked up to see him standing there in casual clothes, looking far different from the delivery man disguise. An awkward smile flickered across her face. "Thomas, hi, what are you doing here?" He held out a small envelope. "I came to deliver this," he said with a wry grin. Seems I can't escape the delivery role. Inside the envelope was an official letter from the airline, informing Claire that she had been fully cleared of wrongdoing and reinstated to active duty, effective immediately. Her eyes welled with tears of relief. "Thank you," she murmured, "but you didn't have to do this personally." Thomas shrugged. "I wanted to. Also, I have some additional news." Claire stiffened, worried that some new twist lurked ahead, but Thomas's tone was gentle. "We discovered more about Avery's background. She was coerced by a criminal syndicate that threatened her family if she didn't cooperate. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it explains her desperation." Claire felt her anger toward Avery soften into pity. "I had no idea," she whispered. Thomas continued. "She confessed that she used your identity to hide the money trail, thinking no one would suspect you, of all people. But it went too far. A heavy silence fell. Finally, Claire sighed. "I hope she finds a way to rebuild her life someday." With her reinstatement letter in hand, Claire had a choice: wallow in regret or use her second chance to become a better person and flight attendant. She opted for the latter. On her first day back, she walked into the terminal, wearing her crisp uniform, feeling a wave of gratitude rather than arrogance. Colleagues cast uncertain glances, but she responded with genuine warmth. Slowly, she rebuilt bridges, listening to people's stories instead of simply issuing orders. Word spread that she had been key in exposing the smuggling ring, no matter how involuntarily. Passengers and co-workers alike began to see her in a new light. Days turned into weeks, and Claire's transformation became evident. Where she once scolded or dismissed others, she now offered help and understanding. She worked diligently, mindful of every security protocol. The memory of nearly being imprisoned as a traitor still haunted her. She remained in touch with Thomas, who updated her on the ongoing case. Avery had accepted a plea bargain in exchange for providing information on the larger smuggling network. As more arrests were made, the media covered the story extensively, occasionally mentioning the flight attendant who helped crack the case. Claire felt relief each time they clarified she was not the culprit. Then, out of the blue, an opportunity arose that marked a major turning point in Claire's life. Delta announced they were seeking an in-house security liaison, someone with flight attendant experience who could collaborate with law enforcement to ensure safety protocols. Claire's newfound insight into the underbelly of airport crime made her a prime candidate. She applied, though she worried her tarnished reputation might hinder her. To her surprise, her application garnered significant support from upper management, who recognized her role in exposing the smuggling ring. With unwavering resolve, she interviewed for the position. On the day of the interview, Claire found herself seated at a long table across from airline executives and a representative from the Transportation Security Administration. They grilled her on crisis management, ethics, and her experiences during the smuggling incident. She answered honestly, owning up to her initial pride and the lessons she learned from it. By the end, the interviewers exchanged impressed glances. As she walked out, she bumped into Thomas, who had been waiting in the hallway. He had quietly helped arrange the meeting, recommending her for the role based on her unique perspective. "How did it go?" he asked. She exhaled a shaky breath. "I think I did well," she said. "Thank you for believing in me." 2 weeks later, Claire received an official offer for the security liaison position. She accepted with gratitude and humility. On her first day, she met with the TSA representative who had been at the interview. He briefed her on advanced screening methods, insider threats, and how to coordinate with law enforcement agencies. Claire felt a surge of purpose. She realized that her ordeal had uniquely equipped her for this responsibility. No longer was she just a flight attendant. She was now entrusted with safeguarding thousands of lives each day. As she settled into her new role, Claire's path crossed with Thomas, more frequently. Though their relationship began in hostility, she had literally slapped him and tried to undermine his presence. They now shared a quiet camaraderie. One evening, they decided to debrief over coffee at an airport cafe. The conversation meandered from security updates to personal anecdotes. At one point, Thomas chuckled. You never did properly apologize for that slap." Claire blushed, remembering the heat of that moment. "I'm sorry," she said earnestly, "for everything." He waved it off with a laugh. Water under the bridge. You've more than redeemed yourself. By late fall, the Avery investigation reached a crescendo in federal court. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy, but provided evidence that implicated higher-level criminals, leading to more arrests. Claire was called to testify, and she recounted the events on the plane and Avery's final desperate attempt to escape. At the sentencing, Avery spoke in her own defense, tears streaming down her face, expressing remorse for involving Claire. Though the court showed limited leniency, Avery's cooperation did reduce her sentence slightly. Claire left the courthouse feeling both relieved and saddened. Another chapter of her life had ended. Through it all, the memory of that first clash with Thomas lingered, a testament to how quickly things can escalate when pride overshadows decency. Claire found it ironic that her moment of arrogance had initially set her on a collision course with the FBI. Yet that same confrontation became the catalyst for her redemption and a new career path. Her personal growth was noticed by those around her. Co-workers commented on how supportive she had become, and passengers wrote letters complimenting her warm demeanor. In staff meetings, Claire advocated for better communication among crew members, urging them to stay vigilant without succumbing to paranoia. One day, while she was reviewing protocols in her new security liaison office, a knock sounded at the door. She opened it to find Captain Martin Doyle, the one who had originally alerted her to the airline security concerns. He handed her a letter. "It's from the CEO," he said. "You might want to read it now." Claire's hands shook as she unfolded the letter. It expressed formal gratitude for her vital role in thwarting criminal activity and introduced a prestigious award she would receive at the next corporate gathering. Claire's eyes misted over. I never expected any recognition," she stammered. The captain clapped her on the shoulder. "You earned it. Just don't let it go to your head," he teased, winking. At the awards ceremony, set in a grand ballroom near the airport, Claire was called to the stage. She wore a refined yet modest evening gown, a far cry from her crisp flight attendant uniform. High-ranking airline officials spoke about her courage and cooperation with law enforcement. Thomas, seated at a table near the front, watched with a proud smile. After a short acceptance speech, Claire stepped down, the weight of her plaque feeling surreal in her hands. It was a moment that reaffirmed how drastically her life had changed. She reflected on the hubris she once flaunted and the karmic retribution that nearly cost her freedom. In some sense, everything had come full circle. In the weeks that followed, Claire devoted herself entirely to her new position. She worked with the FBI, TSA, and airport security personnel to develop enhanced training modules for flight attendants. Her goal was to teach them how to detect suspicious behavior without overstepping professional boundaries or succumbing to personal biases. Each training session underscored a lesson she had learned the hard way: vigilance balanced with respect. Strangely enough, she often used her own story as an example, though she left out the more embarrassing details of how she'd insulted an undercover agent. Underlying all these changes was a subtle undercurrent of unresolved tension between Claire and Thomas. They had collaborated extensively, forging a mutual respect. Yet, neither had directly addressed the spark of chemistry that occasionally flared in quieter moments. One evening, after they had wrapped up a late training session, Thomas offered Claire a ride home. They ended up stopping at a modest diner near the airport. Over plates of simple comfort food, laughter bubbled up as they recounted the mayhem of the smuggling case. There, in the warmth of shared triumph and relief, the walls between them softened. Claire found herself opening up about her past, her family's modest background, and her early dreams of traveling the world. She admitted that her ambition morphed into arrogance over time. "I forgot that every passenger, every co-worker, is a human being with their own struggles," she said. Thomas nodded sympathetically. "We all get lost sometimes. The important part is finding our way back." The hush of the diner cocooned them, an unexpected haven after the storm of events. In that moment, Claire realized her gratitude for this extraordinary twist of fate. Over the following months, new leads emerged in the counterfeit passport case, and Thomas was called away on assignments in different parts of the country. Though they maintained contact, it was sporadic at best. Claire's responsibilities as security liaison grew, and she traveled frequently to conduct training at various airports. Despite their busy schedules, they occasionally found time to meet for a quick coffee, each encounter a small beacon of support amid their hectic lives. Slowly, talk of the humiliating slap that had once overshadowed their dynamic faded into a humorous anecdote they could now laugh about. Eventually, the day came when Thomas's assignment concluded for good. After months of seeing each other in passing, he invited Claire to a small farewell gathering he organized with fellow agents. She attended eagerly. The event took place in a quiet lounge near the FBI field office. As the night wore on, jokes and stories circulated, each agent recounting their toughest undercover experiences. When it came to Thomas's turn, he smirked at Claire. "The first once got slapped by someone I was protecting," he said, stirring laughter from the group. Claire felt her cheeks flush, but smiled in return. She realized that even from such a rocky beginning, lasting bonds could form. As the gathering wound down, Thomas pulled Claire aside. "I'm heading to DC for my next role," he explained. "We might not cross paths for a while." Claire felt an unexpected pang of sadness. "I'll miss working with you," she said softly, meaning every word. He nodded. "Likewise." "You've come a long way, Claire Jennings." Tentatively, he reached out and brushed her hand. "If you ever need help or just want to talk, you know where to find me." She squeezed his hand in return. "Thank you. Take care of yourself, Agent Rivers." The next morning, Thomas was gone, and Claire found herself grappling with a bittersweet sense of closure. The epic drama that began with a slap in an airport corridor had evolved into a life-altering journey for both of them. Though she missed his calm presence, she channeled her energy into perfecting her new role. Under her guidance, flight attendants across multiple airlines began reporting suspicious activities more effectively, leading to a noticeable decline in security breaches. Airline executives praised her achievements, and passengers indirectly benefited from safer flights. Reflecting on her journey, Claire often marveled at the strange turns destiny had taken. From an overconfident flight attendant who dismissed a courier as irrelevant, she had emerged as an integral part of the airline's security framework. The experience taught her invaluable lessons in humility, respect, and the unforeseen consequences of her actions. She realized the depth of karmic retribution in her moment of arrogance. She set off a chain reaction that led to her downfall only to rise again, this time tempered by empathy and self-awareness. In the months that followed, Claire also reconnected with her estranged family, which she had once neglected in the pursuit of career success. She apologized for her distant behavior, attributing it to the pride that once consumed her. Gradually, she rebuilt those bridges, inviting relatives to visit the city and attend an airport open house where she led a special demonstration on airline security measures. The warmth of family gatherings contrasted sharply with the solitary pride she had once worn like armor. She understood now that true strength came from unity and compassion. As she delved deeper into her security liaison work, Claire occasionally received updates from Thomas, typically brief messages about new arrests in the smuggling network. Each time the mention of his name brought a smile to her face. Their paths might diverge geographically, but the bond formed under extraordinary circumstances kept them connected. Meanwhile, Claire's professional reputation soared, and her colleagues shared stories of how she would personally mentor new flight attendants, warning them against the pitfalls of arrogance while encouraging them to remain vigilant and respectful. One particularly late night, Claire found herself alone in the office, finalizing a risk assessment for an upcoming route expansion. She paused at her desk, glancing at the photograph pinned to her bulletin board. It showed her accepting the corporate award, standing beside a few executives. Hidden behind that photo was another snapshot, one that Thomas had discreetly slipped into her things. It was from the day they apprehended Avery. Her eyes softened as she remembered the chaos, the fear, and the eventual triumph. She gently traced a fingertip over the edge of the picture, thinking how a single act of hubris had unleashed a series of events that shaped her into a better, stronger person. Over time, airports worldwide enhanced their security, employing strategies that Claire helped design. She became something of a figurehead, occasionally traveling to aviation conferences to speak about the importance of accountability and humility in security roles. She'd stand at the podium, describing how even a slight misjudgment, like assuming a delivery man to be unimportant, could unravel entire operations. Her speeches were met with applause, and in private, she often gave silent thanks to the agent who first taught her that lesson. On one particularly memorable day, Claire was approached by a senior TSA director with a proposal: join the Federal Aviation Security Committee. It was an opportunity to influence policy on a national scale. The director praised her first-hand experience with insider threats and her proven track record in crisis management. Though the new position would mean stepping away from her beloved airline, Claire found the offer deeply compelling. After careful consideration, she accepted, realizing that her journey had culminated in a mission that reached beyond a single airline. She could now help protect air travel across the country. Standing in her empty Delta office on her final day, Claire reflected on the significance of the path she had taken. The desk was cleared, the walls stripped of personal items. The only thing left was her flight attendant uniform, neatly folded in a garment bag. She ran her fingers along the Delta Airlines logo, a pang of nostalgia coursing through her. This uniform had once represented her identity. Now her identity transcended any single role. She remembered how quickly she judged Thomas when they first met, and the colossal consequences that followed. Yet she also recognized that the journey propelled her to greater heights and deeper humility. Before leaving, she composed an email to Thomas, thanking him for his guidance and friendship. She ended with a simple line: "What began as a slap ended as a revelation. I've learned more than I ever thought possible. Thank you for everything." Hitting send, she felt an emotional weight lift from her chest. The next chapter of her life awaited, and she stepped out of the office with a steady calm. A few days later, as she settled into her new role on the Federal Aviation Security Committee, she received a short response from Thomas. "Some journeys are meant to start with a jolt. Proud of you. Keep soaring." A wistful smile touched her lips. Though separated by distance and new responsibilities, the bond they formed in adversity would endure. And as Claire closed her eyes that night, she reflected one last time on the karmic lesson: how a single rash act and an underestimation of someone's worth had spun a web of consequences, ultimately forging a path to justice, redemption, and unimaginable growth. And so ends the extraordinary saga sparked by a single slap. What began as an arrogant misstep led to a stunning revelation, unmasking dangerous schemes and transforming lives along the way. With cunning villains thwarted and lessons learned, our once proud flight attendant found a greater purpose, stepping up to protect countless travelers. If this thrilling tale kept you on the edge of your seat, consider hitting like to let us know you enjoyed it, and share it with friends who love suspenseful stories. Don't forget to subscribe for even more intriguing adventures. Thank you for watching, and stay safe.